Little Red Riding Hood by Miles Kelly, illustrated by Monica Filipina. Little Red Riding Hood lived in a cottage by a wood. One day her mother said, "Your grandmother is ill. Please take this basket of cakes and fruit to her." So Little Red Riding Hood set off with the basket, wearing her red cape. "Don't talk to strangers, especially not to wolves," her mother called. "Bye, Mum." Little Red Riding Hood walked through the wood. The trees were tall and made scary shadows. Suddenly a wolf jumped out. "Hello," growled the wolf. "Where are you going?" "I'm taking some cakes and fruit to my grandma," said Little Red Riding Hood. "What a sweet child you are," said the wolf. "Why not pick your grandma some flowers too?" With that, the big bad wolf ran off, leaving Little Red Riding Hood happily picking flowers. Little did she know, the wolf had raced ahead to Grandma's house. When he arrived, the wolf knocked softly on the door. "Let me in, Grandma," he called. "I've brought you some cakes and fruit." "It's me, Grandma." But Grandma wasn't silly. "That's not Little Red Riding Hood's voice," she said. Quickly she made her bed and hid in the wardrobe. The wolf burst into the cottage, but Grandma was nowhere to be seen. So he dressed himself in her nightgown and bedcap and got into bed. Soon Little Red Riding Hood knocked on the door. "Come in, dear," snarled the wolf in his nicest voice. "Grandma, you look odd," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Come and sit beside me, dear," growled the wolf. Little Red Riding Hood sat on the bed. "What big ears you have, Grandma," she said. "All the better to hear you with, my dear," replied the wolf. "What big eyes you have, Grandma." "All the better to see you with, my dear." "And your teeth are just huge," exclaimed Little Red Riding Hood. "All the better to eat you with," said the wolf, and he pounced. Little Red Riding Hood screamed loudly and ran away. The wolf leapt after her, but suddenly there was a banging at the door. Little Red Riding Hood opened the door. There stood a woodcutter who had heard her screams. He raised his axe. With a howl of fear, the big bad wolf dashed past the woodcutter, out of the cottage and away into the forest. Then Little Red Riding Hood and the woodcutter heard a strange knocking coming from the bedroom. They opened the wardrobe door and out tumbled Grandma. "This is a cause for celebration," exclaimed Grandma. So she put on the kettle and laid the table. They all sat down to tea and cake. Never again did Little Red Riding Hood talk to strangers. As for the wolf, he kept well away from little girls, especially those wearing red capes. The end.